Hambini fans, and welcome to another episode of Hambini Reams. So one of you lot sent me an email saying they bought one of these Lexon cranks off of Trace Velo's wet dream site AliExpress. You know, that well-known online marketplace where it's a bit like going to swingers night, I suppose. You might get lucky and pull Liz Hurley, or you might end up with someone who'd need a shipping container full of Viagra. Right, so the box. Well, if you can make out the writing, it's here. Well, what's in the box? Packaging. Here it is. I'll give you it. Presentation is not that bad, and to be honest, it looks all right. It's all well padded, and we've got carbon cranks, aluminium axle, screws, bolts, spiders, all sorts of bits and pieces. So let's start off with the screws. They are an Allen head in one side, and on the other side, it's just like a flat head. Normally, I'd whip my pen out to check to see how hard these screws are, or to see if my pen was harder than the screws. But, I mean, it says aluminium AL7075. Was it 7073? My eyesight's getting terrible in my old age. So they will be, well, way softer than steel, way softer than titanium, but they'll probably get the job done. It's quite a big diameter on there, so yeah, that's all right. Now let's talk about cranks. So this is one of the crank arms, and it's carbon and aluminium, so it's a bit fancy. Is this one the non-drive side or drive? This one's the drive side. This one is the non-drive side, and on here you've got the preload system, which is here, and on the collar you can twist that around to take up the slack from your bike frame, which, let's be honest, is probably as well built as a precision-made council estate shed. The locking system is a bit like rotors, so you've got this center bolt and it pulls it all together and then clamps it all up. It's a bit like a knackered marriage counselling session. You better get a load of better guidance in your local pisser, in my opinion. Right, anyway, faffing around aside. Here is the drive side crank arm, and we've got a spline drive for the crank spider. Let's check the fit on that. Oh, that's not a bad fit actually. No wobble I can see, but let's not get too carried away because this is YouTube and I've got a contractual obligation to prance around like a twat to get some views. So come to think of it, if you are after a PhD level breakdown, head over to Weight Wankers. There's probably a battalion of virgins there who'll write you an essay on theoretical crank physics from their bedrooms. Now, the crank spider, at a guess, I'd say it's been machined and forged, sort of machined from a forging, because if it was cast, it will be labelled Aero Coach, and you'd be picking bits of crank out of your legs after your first ride. So, under the microscope, you can actually see the machining marks where it's been milled, and even to the naked eye, it will be difficult to see. You can see them in there. Now, I know that some people will want the weight, so we've got one crank arm, 136 grams, other crank arm, 131 grams, so we're up at, I don't know, 140 grams, something like that. Sorry, 240 grams, and 42 grams for the spiders. It's a lot. The major components, less the screws, is 312 grams. Right, the fun bit. So why are we here? The bloke that sent this in couldn't get the bike, couldn't get his axle to fit through his bike frame. So he tried a Shimano bottom bracket, a Rotom bottom bracket, and probably stuck it in a few other places too, but nothing worked. So it ended up here. Now, this axle is it's 24 millimeters nominal size, which is Shimano compatible. So it looks all right on the surface, but as with many things in life, looks can be slightly deceiving. So On one side, it's oversized by 50 microns and it's 30 microns bigger on the other side. So that's 0.03 millimeters and 0.05 millimeters. So it's not much, you might say, but in the world of precision engineering and bearings, that's like an eternity. Right, the thing is, machining long slender shafts can be a right pain in the backside because they like to whip about. So you've got to hold them steady in either end, which clearly wasn't a priority here. So when the parts are mass produced, they usually also feed out of bar stock. I mean, if you want something done properly, most of the money goes into the bits you can't even see. And this axle, well, it's a perfect example of kind of like how not to do it. The size discrepancy is obvious as soon as you whip out the micrometers. Now, this isn't a micrometer, but you can see the vernier, and I wouldn't say it's a calibrated instrument to the level that we need it, but it's got digits on it so you can read them. So it's slightly oversized, so it's 24.03. Ideally, it needs to be slightly under the nominal size. So that is where I guess the problem kind of like is. Now, usually there are two systems at play, so hole basis and shaft basis. So bearings are usually a smidge under their nominal size. So a 30 millimeter bearing might actually be 29.98. So the axle needs to be slightly smaller than that. Otherwise, it is like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Now, that's not the only cock-up. There's a bit of eccentricity between the two sides. Basically, the bearing landings aren't concentric, which means your bottom bracket bearings are going to have a slight tilt. And on this occasion, that's the cost you save by, well, getting it from AliExpress and the QA that goes with it. So, how do you sort this mess out? Well, there are a couple of options. You could machine the axle, so you could go across here and machine it so it is concentric, but this anodizing will probably chip and leave it, you know, the surface rougher than your nan's elbows. So grinding it will be better, but you'd end up with such a slack fit, you'd be like banging a bucket. Or you could go for the full nuclear option, wallet bashing option, which is to machine that back, weld it, and then remachine it. And that is overkill for something like this. Now, the other option is to modify the housing or to modify the bottom brackets. So Shimano bottom brackets sometimes use MR2437 bearings. So like this one from Toyama. If I get the logo out, there you go, Toyama. And to make this work, you need to grind down the inner hardened race. You can see it doesn't go over there because it's too tight. And it's the same on the other one. It's just too tight. Now, trying to grind down a bearing in a race is almost like trying to file down a brick with a nail file. It's just so hard. So in my case, I machined the guy up 2 new top hats, which are these things in here. And these are a bit wider than standard. So one side is slightly wider than the other because you've obviously got 50 microns on one side and 30 microns on the other. And you know, most top hats, they're injection molded, but mine are machined, so it's easier to tweak. That said, machining plastic that's thinner than a slice of ham is a faff, but we got there in the end. So we get the axle. Oh, that's the tight side. So there we go. Goes straight through that side, and then it's a decent fit. Yeah,